I'm Maggie O'Keefe, Democratic Committeewoman of Chicago's 40th Ward. I'd like to welcome you to the 80, the Cook County Democratic Party's podcast about our organization, its candidates, and its leaders. We're currently interviewing the party's endorsed candidates for the June 28th, 2022 primary election, so you can learn more about their backgrounds and unique stories. Today, I'm really excited to be chatting with Judge Thomas More Donnelly. Judge Donnelly, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're crisscrossing the county. I don't envy you, that's for sure. But I would love to just get started with you about your experience on the campaign. Like I said, you're crisscrossing the county. What's been your most favorite, strange, weird, cool story from the campaign trail so far?
Well, something that was really affected me was last weekend. I was doing churches in Dalton, Chicago Heights, and Park Forest. And it was particularly moving to go to Dalton and Chicago Heights and see sort of the epicenter of the foreclosure crisis. Every 10th house is burned out and shuttered. And go into churches where the issue of public safety isn't a theoretical or something that you watched on the news, but something these communities are facing head on. And it was really profoundly moving for me to hear from ministers during their preaching how this is a really nuanced issue for these congregations, because they're on both sides of it. Both the accused and the victims are both in the pews. And the thing that came out of that for me is that it's our proximity as public servants to the problems that our courts have to address that should inform us. And to the extent we're distant from the problems that we're trying to solve, we're less informed and ill-prepared, I think, to really address them in all their complexity. And so I think it occurred to me as one of the real benefits of campaigning is gets you out into the community, gets you into situations and listening to other people and their experiences and their lived suffering. And what we do in the courts is deal with people who come in with suffering. The people don't come to court on their happy days. So it's really important, I think, to enter into those experiences and learn from it. And I think that it isn't a quirky thing or a fun thing, but to me, it was something profound. And it's not something where I can encapsulate it in a sentence as to what I learned, but I learned that the problems are more complex than I had imagined. And I think that's always a good thing for humility, to understand that things are much more complex than you think. And so that when you enter in as a judge, adjudicating a controversy, to know at the get-go that there's a lot you don't understand is a good starting place, because it leaves you open and listening. So that's a benefit, I think, to the fact that judges are required to campaign, is that it forces us to go out in the community and learn.
Yeah, I imagine, since you are going to different communities and then you're also going to work during the week, that you're meeting folks from all of these different communities. So this is a very unique opportunity for someone like yourself, like you said, campaigning, to really understand where these folks are actually coming from prior to coming into your courtroom.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is to see what lies beyond the court papers. What is the personal aspect of this, and develop an imagination for what that might be, so you understand the effect of your decision.
So, during your time as judge, since you are currently an associate judge, very unique to you specifically, you've been working on passing legislation down in Springfield during your time on the bench. So I would love, for you to tell us more about your restorative justice work that you've been doing while judge, and why it's important to have judges like you on the bench.
Well, Senate Bill 64, which was signed into law on July 15th of 2021 by J.B. Pritzker, was an idea I had for solving a problem we had in our 4 restorative justice courts here in Cook County. We had a lot of resistance from the defense bar to participating in restorative justice. Mm-hmm. And the reason was that there was no confidentiality that protected their clients. So their clients could be diverted into these courtrooms, participate in a peace circle, and then later have their admissions made if the peace circle intervention was unsuccessful, and those admissions could be used to convict them in court. So we needed a confidentiality protection. And I worked with a group of lawyers and judges, Stuart Katz from juvenile court, now retired, and I got a lawyer from the Moran Center up in Evanston. We came together with some language. And then I recruited a couple of sponsors. Carol Amons from Champaign, I'd worked together with her, and she's a representative from Champaign County on fines and fees. And I said, would you be willing to be our House sponsor? We got Robert Peters in the Senate, and worked really to lobby legislators. And Chief Judge Evans came down at my request and testified before the Senate committee that heard the bill. I went down and lobbied a lot of the Republicans in the House because we were trying to get this to be a bipartisan bill. We got 12 Republican votes, the only criminal justice reform bill that got any Republican support. And I convinced the Republicans in the South part of the state that this is very like what they try to do in their churches in Southern Illinois, pre-dispute resolution. And what we're doing in the churches and community organizations here in Chicago and in our courts is a way of resolving criminal disputes among neighbors without court intervention. And this is very effective for getting satisfactory results from victims. It is the #1 choice of victims. They have consistently exhibited much higher satisfaction rates from restorative justice because they get a place at the table and they get a chance to determine what is going to be the satisfaction that they want out of the case. And we got the bill passed in the legislature. Governor Pritzker signed it, and now it is having effect at giving birth to all of our community restorative justice hubs at North Lawndale, Precious Blood, and back of the yards, our 4 restorative justice courts spread throughout the city. And it's really exciting to see a birth to a way of giving satisfaction to victims while not tainting young people with a criminal record when they could be helped by the community, and the community has a place at the table in restorative justice. They can be helped by the community to become productive citizens. And that's just a win-win for everyone and a real advancement for public safety when we get somebody back on the track and we get the victim satisfied.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And more importantly, getting that piece of legislation passed. It is no easy feat to get a piece of legislation passed. Was this a piece of legislation that you've been working for a while, or did you get it in
5 years?
I thought so. Yes, exactly.
So I attempted it first as a Supreme Court rule. The Supreme Court said, no, it's something the legislature should do. And so we had to start back from square one. And we attempted to get a bill in with Will Guzzardi last year, and we didn't get anywhere. And then we came back this year and I talked to Governor Pritzker. He suggested working with the Black Caucus. So that's what I did, and built upon relationships I've had over the years. And we were able to get success this year.
That's really great. I imagine that, before you became a judge, you were a public defender.
Yes.
I'm sure that probably inspired you a lot to create a piece of legislation like that. So as a public defender, going in front of judges for your clients on not their best day, how did that experience as a lawyer going in front of the Cook County judicial system or wherever you were practicing, how did that inform you as a judge now?
Well, it's funny because it often causes me to chuckle. I was a very aggressive public defender. And I get really annoyed at aggressive lawyers. And then I realize, who does this resemble? It resembles me. And I think it's a really good experience to have, is that every client deserves zealous representation. Does that make things more difficult for judges? Yes, because it makes decision-making harder when somebody is pushing their position. But is that what the system is for? Yes. So it's, I think, very salutary for me to remember that I was the lawyer who was pushing every statute, every rule, trying to force compliance with everything. And it gives me a little bit of patience with lawyers who are doing the same thing for their clients, because everyone deserves the full protection of the laws. And I think that's sometimes something we lose sight of as judges, is that we want things to resolve easily and for disputes to go away. And that's not always the right thing to happen. Sometimes people wish to advance their rights all the way through. And that's something that we as judges should say, that's your right, that's what I'm here for. And I think that's one of the advantages I have as a former public defender and as a former zealous advocate for people, is that I understand that. Maybe sometimes make my life a little bit more difficult because there's a dispute I think that could be resolved short of trial, or something that could be narrowed in the issues that are presented at trial. But at the end of the day, it's each individual citizen's right to access to justice that matters. And so I think that's helpful for me to remember when I'm presiding over trials and have people who really want to push their rights. And I take a step back and say, that's what I'm here for.
For folks that are tuning in and watching, I knew Judge Donnelly without knowing him. I know Judge Donnelly, A, because you live on the north side, but B, because your son runs a compost business that I use called Waste Not Compost. Liam is a perfect ideal community member trying to do better for everybody. And I think that you are also in that category. Is your entire family of public service? How did that kind of come about? Where do where is this background coming from in public service within your own family lineage?
Well, I think that I would say all of our family members in some way or other are dedicated to public service. So, my wife was a school teacher and taught art to kids, especially kids that were underserved. That was her objective. And in her volunteer work, she does work for immigrants and refugees, and that's her real passion because she comes from an immigrant family. My oldest son also has been a school teacher and teaching kids in the Texas area. Our number 2 son is trying to help worker-owned businesses thrive. So worker cooperatives is his passion. And he's worked with a window company, New Era Windows, on the west side at 35th and Western to help them thrive, because he believes that worker-owned corporations give people dignity in a way that working for an employer that's separate from you doesn't. And our youngest son, my wife and I's youngest son, Gabriel, wants to work in public safety and make our community more safe. So we all share that. I also should mention my mom, who composted since the 1960s in our backyard and was an inspiration for Liam, I think, in doing the composting, as she felt it was a real form of civic action. It wasn't just a nice thing to do, but it was a witness to the importance of the earth and our planet, and that it was a kind of political action, that it had significance beyond just the garden that you grew from the compost, but about who we are vis-a-vis our fellow citizens, that we're taking care of the planet, not just for us, but for all of us. And I think Liam, as you know, is so passionate about being emission-free and composting, is that you have to be consistent. You have to be totally consistent in the way you do your business, you live your life. And that is, you have to be imagining what the impact is on the fellow citizens of the planet. And taking care of all of us is the only way to take care of any of us.
Geez, the Donnelly family is the gold star for public service on the north side. That is for sure. Just lastly, getting down to the bottom of the ballot is always a challenge for judges. So for those that are listening, why is it important to get down to the bottom of the ballot to vote for judges? And what can the people that are listening or watching this tell their friends before we get to the election? You know, how do we convince folks to get down there?
Well, I think the person who's going to most likely affect your individual life is a judge, not a legislator or a member of the executive branch. You will have during your life a traffic ticket, a divorce, a business deal gone bad. God forbid you will have something more serious. But all of you will have something that involves the court system, even something as simple as probating a will. And so we're dependent upon the quality of public service that we get. And there are a lot of people who want to become judges, but it's up to our citizenry to sift those. I think the Democratic Party has done a very good job at arraying a wide diversity so that the bench looks like the community it serves. But it's also done a good job in terms of the quality and the bar that it's set for the level of experience that's required and the quality of work that these people have done. So I would invite and encourage citizens to take a look at the Democratic slate and to look at the quality of people. You have partners from large law firms, you have people from community law offices, but wherever it's coming from, it's people with depth of experience. And that's the kind of judge you want, is someone who is not shell-shocked when they get a case because it's so beyond what they've experienced and they're out of their depth. You want judges who, while they may not have done precisely this kind of case or this area, that they have a breadth of experience so they can, by analogy, figure out what is the appropriate procedure to do, and with the advice and counsel of lawyers, proceed in the case in a way that effectuates justice. And I think that's very important for each and every citizen because they will be affected and your community is affected. Issues of public safety, issues of, as we've read in the papers lately, about whether a decrepit apartment building is left decrepit or is there action taken to remediate problems. That rests with the judiciary. So things to do with our well-being of our community, our safety, and the individual liberties that we hold precious is all safeguarded by our judiciary. And so I'd encourage people to go all the way down to the ballot, look at the judges, look at their credentials from the Bar Association, but also look at the slate the Democratic Party has come up with, because I think it's a slate you can trust.
Judge Donnelly, where can we find you on the ballot? What's your punch number? Where can we find you on the internet to learn more about you?
All right. My punch number is 185. I'm the Sullivan vacancy, which is the last vacancy. So that's why I want to encourage you to go all the way down ballot. Sharon Sullivan is the judge I'm filling the vacancy for. And the website that I have is elect Judge Thomas More Donnelly.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Happy election. See you out there on June 28th, everyone.
Yes. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.